delivery styles, but we'll also talk about how culture makes a difference in what we and how we view delivery styles. All right, to begin, this is kind of a fun lecture. It's easy. We have a little energy going through you. It's a little long. So to begin with, what I want to point out, what we're doing in this class, is teaching you, and this is the grand scheme of things for this type of a class, is we're teaching you how to be successful within this culture. And so I want to bring up that there are different ways to look at good public speaking. We're going to focus on public speaking right now. You have a speech coming up, so we're going to have to start thinking about it and dealing with some of, well, anxiety is going to be one of our lectures coming up. But when we're talking about how we view a speaker, we may want to also consider the culture or the context of the situation as well. So looking at these two different styles, the listener-centered approach or the speaker-centered approach, listener-centered is what we call audience-centered. So in this class, I'll continue on saying audience-centered throughout this class. And what that means is, as a listener, you can come into a presentation and you basically don't have to do anything but be willing to listen. That's it. And this is a nice approach for the listener because you have to do little work, and the speaker should be taking a lot of extra time to make sure that the audience understands their message. And if they don't, then it's really on the speaker. So they should be looking at feedback, they should be asking questions, do you understand this? What can I do to make this more clear for you? They can anticipate certain things. So the speaker holds a lot of responsibility. The other thing about the speaker, should have one thing, should not have multiple topics within a presentation, because that can be very confusing to the listeners. When we're talking about being audience-centered or listener-centered, you can see this in other approaches, like other disciplines. So education in here, where are my education folks? Okay, so I know we have a couple of them. So education, that's what's called being student-centered. The focus is on the student, and it's up to the teacher to be the one to make sure everything is crystal clear. So you're holding a lot of responsibility as an educator. If you're in the healthcare field, what would that sound like? What would the center be on? Patient-centered. So you can see that as a part of our culture. So this is going to help you be successful if I teach you how to do this. Now this is very difficult to do, and this is the reason why we take our time and we take steps to get to this place where we are highly audience-centered, which means that throughout this course we're going to be building on the skills that we have. The other type of speaker would be the speaker-centered. So just as it sounds, the center is on the speaker. So a speaker, some type of an expert in something, can have multiple themes, can drop in, can deliver a presentation, and it is up to the audience to be crystal clear on what the speaker is saying. So if they don't, that means that they haven't prepared themselves well enough. Now, we can see examples of this in our culture. So as students, how many of you are in upper level classes? Okay, so walking into an upper level class, what class is it?
My capstone for computer security.
Oh gosh, yeah, I can imagine that one would be. How about you?
Advanced database.
Okay, so yeah, okay, this does not surprise me at all that these courses was considered speaker-centered. So when you come into the classroom, I doubt that your instructors give a quick review of the previous years. Okay, you walk in and they expect you to know everything, and maybe and then some. So if you don't, the responsibility lies on the students to make sure that they get up to speed. So if they've fallen behind in any area, or they don't remember anything, you're pulling out your books before you go to class and you're figuring out what you're supposed to know. So that's what the feel of a speaker-centered approach is like. So when you go to a concert, you know, we typically go to concerts that we like, people that we know pretty well. Has anyone been to a concert that they didn't know? Who was it?
Kane Brown.
So, for what reason, if you didn't know?
My friends wanted me to go with.
Okay, all right, very, very typical. Okay, yes?
I've been to a Moby concert.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, that doesn't seem like your genre. Okay.
It was cool though.
Yeah, okay, all right. So, the level of comfort in going there and not really knowing the artist. What were some of the thoughts that were going through your mind?
I just thought I was gonna be bored and stand there staring the whole time.
And?
I was pretty much bored and standing there staring the whole time.
How about you?
I was actually, it was really cool because he was with the orchestra, so it was his music and the orchestra music, which you wouldn't think is something that goes together. So I enjoyed it. And I
Okay.
didn't really go in with any expectations.
Okay, I can see that as actually being a little bit more audience-centered. How many of you have been to a concert and thought to yourself, I should have listened to a few more albums before I came in? Okay. All right, so that would be an example where we can start to have that uncomfortable feeling like I should have done more before I came in here. For these examples, they were kind of on I would say, an edge where that there was more audience-centeredness, more that you could relate to. So, other situations where you may find yourself, students that have shared with me that they've been in the military. Anybody in here has been in the military? Know anybody from the military? Okay, there we go. So what I understand is presentations from any of the military branches are highly speaker-centered. So you better be up to speed on everything either to gain the information. So I'm getting some head nods over here in acknowledgement that you know.
Army brat too.
Okay. Okay. So here we have another situation. Okay. Has anybody else been in this scenario? You locked in and you thought, I should have done my homework before I came in here.
Yes. I tried going to Enterprise Rent-A-Car and I worked there for like 4 days, but the thing was that I was going to be cleaning cars outside in the winter time, and it was like, my first day was below 5, I think. and people were like, not even the mailman works today, and I was like, so yeah, and I didn't, and I almost slipped and fell on ice, and this guy called me a dumbass, and yeah, so.
It was like really lovely.
Yeah, it was.
And what was the name of the organization?
Enterprise Rent-A-Car by the airport. Never going back there again, don't rent anything from there, trust me.
That's a terrible story.
I know.
But some organizations are like that.
Yeah.
You come in and they expect you to know everything. Well, we gave you the handbook, so you should have known that. You should have known that. Where others will kind of take you under and help you with that. So we can see this in different scenarios. So whenever you're walking into that situation, it may not be that it's such a bad presentation. So you can look at this, for example, church services. The very old religions tend to have that tradition, and they're not going to explain all the things that they do. They just expect you to go along with it or to learn about it before you get there, or learn about it after, when you have that uncomfortable feeling. So that's another scenario where you can find yourself in those situations. You will at some time, if you haven't yet, you will at some time be in that situation. So it's good to be able to bring that up so that you know that it's not necessarily a bad speaker. It may be a different culture, although I don't quite agree with your situation that that was necessarily a good situation. I think you should have known. But now that we've talked about how culture, different contexts can change, different speaking, how we view speakers, and how we are as audience members, the next thing are the different types of styles. So the first one is an impromptu, which is very simple. So what is an impromptu?
Spur of the moment.
Yeah, spur of the moment. So it is very little preparation. You usually have a topic, you have a few minutes to think about it, and then you have your presentation. So it's not planned. You're not nervous before that point because you don't know what's going to happen. Then it happens. So there's a lot of advantages to the style of presentation. So what are some things that we can think of that would be good about an impromptu presentation? Yeah. It's a great opportunity to be exceedingly honest right there. Because what else is going to come up? If I were to say something about your favorite hobbies, your favorite music, we'll go back to music. Your favorite music, what's going to come out? Your favorite music. This isn't the best type of presentation to say, you know, about trivia. Name all the states. You know, that usually doesn't work out very well for an impromptu. What other advantages could there be?
They can improve high levels of knowledge of the topic.
Like, wow, I had no idea. You're so knowledgeable about that. So definitely there's an opportunity there to learn about a person in their authentic kind of state. Well, I guess there's some nervousness involved in probably any kind of presentation. Where do you think the nervousness levels are for this? Okay. How many of you would be very nervous? I have a few of you that would probably be a little bit more at ease. Okay, some other things about impromptu. Let's talk about the negatives. Okay, a lot of us raised our hands for the nervousness level. What if it's a topic you don't know about? What can happen?
Just stand there quietly.
Yeah. So impromptus can be highly inaccurate.
You probably don't have any really sources to cite.
Good.
To back up your information.
Good. So that's lacking. And just think of how you're writing out your speeches now. You're thinking specifically, what's your specific purpose? What's your thesis statement? Exactly what are my main points? You don't have any of that. So your organization can lack in this type of a presentation. Some people can pull this off very well, but it does come with drawbacks. Manuscript. Reading from top to bottom. Has anybody used a teleprompter?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, I was, when I first moved to Lincoln years ago, my first job was one of those people that would call people around election time, and I had to read the teleprompter.
Mhm.
It was the worst job ever.
Why was it the worst?
You get yelled at home a lot, and then, like, there's words that you just, because everything was a different state, so it was just random states. So, we don't really have time to rehearse the lines.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of pressure. Oh, okay. That's actually typically not the response of a manuscript, though a teleprompter does have a certain amount of stress because of the way the lines move. If you go too fast, too slow. But manuscript in general, let's take out the teleprompter, but that's an interesting perspective. There's some really good qualities to a manuscript presentation. What do you think are the good things about a manuscript?
It can be really,
It's easy.
The format is easy?
Yeah, they can be really organized.
Okay. Now, not easy in the sense that you can just go up there and wing it, because an impromptu, you're absolutely winging it. You have to prepare for it, so you have to take the time, but once you put in that time, and you have your cards in front of you, you have everything exactly the way you want it. So that actually alleviates a lot of stress. So when I ask students what they prefer, it's usually something like a manuscript. I think I have some note cards in here that could. Yeah, so something like this. You'd have note cards. You'd have everything written down. Hopefully the note cards are numbered. So what could be a disadvantage?
Reading the card instead of looking at who you're talking to.
Mixing the cards up. Those are potentials. So if you're reading the cards, when we read out loud, what can we do?
Sound robotic.
Robotic, we go too fast, we're not picking up any kind of nonverbals from our audience, whether they're understanding, because we're losing our eye contact. So those are some major disadvantages to manuscripts, even though they're really nice. These are great. This is a great opportunity for actually first-time presenters to use a manuscript, because you have everything right here. You can word things exactly how you like them. Now this is something that as audience members love. Okay, who likes live theater? I'm a big fan. I love live theater. Okay, so why is this so intriguing to us? The entertainment world. We'd love to be audience members in this.
They can just stop and review the scene if they miss something appropriate.
So they have to be really good, and we enjoy this. They have an opportunity to work on their expressions, their nonverbals, to seem like they're making a connection, even though they're following a script, to create this whole other world in this small space. It's nice. It's nice as an audience member to be a part of that. So as a presenter, what do you think are some of the disadvantages? That's the big one. We're fallible, and even though we may know something inside and out, anything can happen. You can look at an audience member and maybe they do something that kind of catches you, and the next thing you know, you're off on your script.
That was one thing. I was in speech and 4-H for a while, and there was one girl, she had a really good speech, but you could tell she memorized it word for word instead of just paraphrasing it. And she lost her words, and she was just dead silent for at least 10 seconds, could not find where she was.
And those 10 seconds probably felt like hours to her.
Oh, yeah, so.
Yeah, that's, and you know, you feel for people when that happens. You're like, wow, just remember it. Sometimes people around you can help you with that. And then the other thing as a presenter, it takes an enormous amount of time. You know, especially if it's something long, you know, I mean, even a few minutes from top to bottom, you have to take a lot of time in order to memorize something. So this is another thing about memorization. It's great for a lot of reasons, but it's also very difficult to do. Okay, last but not least. Who can say this word?
Extemporaneous.
I love this word. Just fun just to drop in casual conversation. So, extemporaneous. It is the best of all worlds. It is the worst of all worlds. It is the one that combines all three presentation styles. And it is the most audience-centered. That's the thing to remember, audience-centered. So it looks like note cards. And in the note cards, you're not reading them word for word. You're using them as a reference. So you have memorized portions in there too. And if an audience member asks you a question, you can stop, you can pause, you can respond, and then look back on your note cards to get you back on script. Sometimes you can go without note cards and still be extemporaneous. This is what we're working towards in this class. So the most audience-centered, you can anticipate what your audience might ask. You get better as you do more of these. Why is it so hard? What are the big disadvantages of this? Definitely. Mhm. Yeah, somebody could ask something that I think I know, but that part is the sort of the impromptu, so I hope I don't say anything wrong. So you have to really prepare yourself for those uncertain moments, which they happen. And you do get better at it as you do more of this. But it is very difficult. It takes a lot of time, but it's wonderful for audience members. So if we want to go to that listener-centered approach, the audience-centered approach, this is it right here, extemporaneous. At the end of this class, you and a group will be presenting and you'll have interaction within it. So we're gonna dive into extemporaneous with your group projects. And you should be doing it somewhat through this first one, the second one more so, your presentation, and then the last one, you will have that interaction. One question for you. In this class, when I present from the middle of the room. I don't know how comfortable you are as far as you're used to seeing this. Would this be your comfort level when you present, or would you want to present like in standard row setting up in front of the class?
Front.
Front? Who says front of the class? Who says middle? We may consider this, we'll revisit this when we decide on which days we're going to present. So if we have about half the class that prefers to present in the middle and half that prefers to present in the front, we may just make that arrangement for the one day where those that want to present in the front have that option. Okay, let's review this very quick before we go into an activity. Impromptu, what is it? Okay, what are the advantages?
Less anxiety supposedly.
But maybe not for all.
Trying to overthink it.
Okay, so because you don't have to overthink it. Okay, and what are its faults? Higher possibility of. Two at the same time, yeah.
A higher possibility of bad information.
Okay. All right. And what was it found?
Not organized.
Not organized, perfect. Okay, manuscript. It's a script from top to bottom. We will miss you. Okay, so we have, we can lose the connection with our audience. Mechanical. What else? This one more than anything, you can go too wet. Yeah. This one has a high potential for going very fast. Okay. It's great because
You're way more organized.
and it's right there. It's all in. Okay. Memorized, we love memorized, top to bottom. Why do we love it?
I really don't remember there being a good thing about it. It sounded horrible.
Switch
Oh,
perspective.
the shows, like plays and
Yeah,
things.
yeah, switch in perspective. It's great because it's what? It's fun for the audience, yeah. Okay, all right, go ahead and tell me what the bad thing is.
You lose your place. And then you forget everything you were saying, and then you just stand there staring.
Okay, high stress, just high stress. And then the last, the best of all worlds, the worst of all worlds, but the most what? Okay, so that's the most audience centered. Are we ready for our activity?